America. Dr. Grace, you and I are not advocating violence. I hope that you and I and our children and our children's children continue to live in America where we do not witness nor have to participate in any kind of domestic violence, war, civil wars, riots, to that extreme. We're not advocating it. However, we're speaking the truth that you and I both, in our positions of media involvement, we're hearing people talk about that possibility a lot. What's your gut feeling about this? What are you hearing and what are you feeling about it?
Well, Carl, I want to underline that I am, a Pacific person. I believe in peace and of loving our neighbor and loving our enemies, and obviously violence is always a last resort. Yeah. What I'm saying, and I think what you're saying, is that we are all beginning to fear it.
Yeah.
We're beginning to fear it because so many of the key beliefs that conservatives hold dear are under attack by liberals without room to maneuver.
Right.
That is to say, they're not being only attacked. It's as though there's an assault on conservative and Christian freedoms.
Yeah.
There's an assault on our founding principles. So there's going to be a point where there's going to be a very strong pushback. And unless the left actually practices true tolerance, there will be violence.
Right. Well, tyrannical governments almost always overstep, and only a couple of things happen. I mean, they overreach. And you were a history professor for years, so I mean, if I say something wrong, tell me. But my understanding of history is that tyrannical governments. Well, look, the British government, and look what happened with the colonies. There's an example. They overreach till something snaps, and either that tyrannical government seizes control and then enslaves those people who rose up against them, and we see North Korea, for example, or the tyrannical government overreaches and there is a revolution and the tyrannical government loses that population, for example, the United States of America. Am I right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And what the Founding Fathers wanted to prevent was exactly that the Republic would slowly slide into factionalism, and then from factionalism, you always have violence. Remember, the Founding Fathers, they had studied all of the previous constitutions of the ancient world,
right.
And they said, this structure that we're going to create is going to try to prevent any of the mistakes made in the past. But the key to preventing any one group oppressing another is that we all have to swear an oath of allegiance to these principles. You see, we can't always be rediscussing our founding beliefs.
Right.
And what we're seeing now is, as I showed you in great detail with that document, is there's a complete attack on what are the ties that bind us. What is it? Like most of the time when you sit across the table when you're talking to a liberal and you sit across the table from that person, you can find some area that you say, okay, we're not going to cross over into this line. For example, we're going to have a discussion. We're not going to cross over into violence, right? So you establish certain parameters of discussion.
Right.
That's what the Constitution does for us.
Right.
It says we can disagree till we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, we're not going to rediscuss these founding principles because our founding fathers were brilliant men who had already studied all of the mistakes of previous constitutions, and they created a system that prevents those mistakes from being recreated. So we agree on that, right?
Right.
Well, apparently wrong.
Yeah. Well, because just a bunch of old evil white men. I mean, what did they know? And
if you see, Carl, exactly what's happening to our Constitution, this disrespect of it, this growing disrespect of it, it's not just disrespect, but now it's almost like a point of honor to disobey the Constitution. That's what's so radical about this piece. Well, you're seeing the very same thing happening with our Bible, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I mean, the Bible is they're going to do to the Bible what they're doing to the Constitution.
Which is the subject of my next book. But anyway, go ahead. No,
yes,
you're right.
What they're slowly going to do, for example, if we have same-sex marriage, which is rampant across our land, eventually they're going to say, well, you have a book called the Bible that says that it is wrong for two people of the same sex to have sexual relations. Therefore, that book is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to attack it. And then you're going to have other schools of thought that are going to emerge and say, well, why don't we rewrite certain passages of it to make it more tolerant to the new ethos? So instead of the Bible being the barometer by which we live our lives, it'll be this new and emerging and ever-changing creed which dictates what should be in the Bible.
Right. Right.
Which is what's happening in our churches, and that's what's very alarming.
Right.
Instead of our moral and spiritual leaders saying, this is where we draw the line in the sand, the opposite is happening. The leftist agenda is penetrating the minds and hearts of our religious and moral and spiritual leaders.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And again, and I'm not trying to throw in cheap shots for my book here, but my next book deals by and large with the bulk of the philosophical statements you just made. And I'm going to be examining all of what you just said from a biblical point of view, a scientific point of view, a historical point of view, and a logical point of view. And I wished I could tell the title over the air. It's a cool title. But no, I'm with you. I mean, you and I are on the same page on this.
Carl, we really look forward to that book. That book is going to be very, very much needed, and we need all of the brilliant listeners of Freedom Friday who understand the Constitution to take pen to paper and defend the Constitution with every breath in their bodies, because this is the beginning of the new barbarism that we've been talking about.
Yep.
When we discuss something like Sandy Hook, all the couple of weeks that it was going on, we discussed it at length. We talked about this emerging new barbarism. Mm-hmm. I take a piece like this as an example of the new barbarism amongst our elite.
Yeah, let's give up on the Constitution. Yeah. Well,
speaking of the elite, speaking of being frustrated with our elite.
Yes, talk about this disarray among the Republicans.
What a mess. You know,
yeah,
I've got to say, this whole fiscal deal negotiations have been absolutely horrifying to watch. My position on the negotiations regarding these tax hikes is as follows. It's the basic principles of war. Either you defend a point to the end, or you capitulate.
Yeah.
But when you capitulate at the very beginning.
Right.
What you don't do is you say, we're going to defend this principle to the end. And then at the ninth hour, you capitulate. What does that do? That is a policy of half measures. It signals to our antagonists that the conservative movement is weak and in disarray, and that's exactly what Boehner did. Had Boehner said right after the election, look, the president won the election, he has a mandate to raise taxes on the wealthy, I'm going to negotiate something that allows that to occur, well, that's a respectable position. Mm-hmm. Had he said, we the Republicans stand firmly against any increase in taxes, period, and he held to that, that's a position we can respect. Mm-hmm. But to say we are going to fight you to the end and then we capitulate, that is a disaster.
Yes. Yeah, and it has divided the Republican Party. It has
divided the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is now in complete and utter disarray.
Right.
It doesn't know, number one, what to do about the 2008 law, the recent loss, the 2012 loss that we just suffered, what direction we should take, how much of our principles we should concede. There's a consensus emerging that we should completely capitulate on illegal immigration.
Yeah.
That we should just say that we are a party that is going to provide amnesty. And there's another wing of the party that's saying, no, we have to stand firm on all our principles, even if it means that we become a dwindling minority.
Well, I can tell them what to do, and I don't know that you're going to like this either, but I can tell them what to do. They need to concentrate on what I've been talking about for the last 5 years, and that is we have an Occupy Wall Street and illegal alien as commander-in-chief. There's still no legal evidence that he's even a U.S. citizen. That would take care of a lot of our problems. You want to talk about violating the Constitution, Dr. Grace? I think our Constitution, our nation is under assault by an infiltrator. That's what I think.
Well, you and I agree on that, and even if those that might disagree on this whole birther controversy, we've seen how the current president has violated the Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
For example, the war on Libya, which he proceeded.
One travesty after another.
Yeah, without congressional authority, and we can give many, many examples. All the czars that he appointed, I mean, a lot of these, he's just basically, in many cases, making up things as he goes along.
He is.
What's very disturbing is that we need a united opposition to this, basically this perpetrator.
I know, and that's a nice word. Dr. Grace, we've got to go.